Hello, everybody. This is Find Your Flourish. I'm Avrohom Jacks, your CEO or Chief Encouragement Officer, and I'm delighted you're going to be spending time with me. I just want to ask you a big favor. If you could like, subscribe, comment. This really helps the algorithm spread our message far and wide. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Today, I want to tell you a story about a man who shocked himself with an electric shock 190 times in the span of 15 minutes. And no, it's not a Marvel comic superhero origin story. It's a person who wanted to avoid being alone. It's an experiment that the University of Virginia and Harvard University did together. In this experiment, they took volunteers and they gave them a mild electric shock. And they asked the volunteers, how many of you would be willing to pay money to avoid that shock in the future? 42 people said, don't ever give me that shock again. It's too unpleasant. I'll pay you money for it. They took those 42 people and they put them in stage 2 of the experiment. They put them into a nondescript room. There was blank walls in the room. There were no books. There was certainly no smartphones, nothing in the room, no other person. And they had to sit in the room alone in stillness with their own mind, with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. And they were still hooked up to the cathodes that could give them the electric shock. They had a button that if they pressed it, they could get an electric shock. 18, almost 50% of the 42 people shocked themselves rather than being alone with their own thoughts. So even though they were willing to pay money to not get that shock, being alone, being in stillness was so uncomfortable for them that they would rather get the shock. And one of the people, as I said before, shocked himself 190 times in that 15 minutes that he was in the room. So we really don't want to be alone. And I think humanity has lost the ability to be alone and to be in stillness. We live in such a noisy world. There's so much, from the noisy neighbor playing music next door to the email that dings in our inbox. Our world is a very noisy place, and we are very distracted. We scroll on our social media when we're standing in line at the grocery store. We scroll on our social media when we're tired. We scroll when we're going to bed. We scroll the first thing we wake up in the morning. I saw a statistic that 90% of people check their smartphone within 10 minutes of waking up. So we're checking our smartphones before we're brushing our teeth. And it's all partly because we just want to be distracted so that we don't have to be alone within our own thoughts. There's a study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It's a fascinating study. It began in the 1930s, and they tracked people over the decades and now multi-generations. And every year they give them a very detailed questionnaire, and they want to look and tease out what makes a person live a long life, what makes a person happy. And the number one thing that they found that makes people healthy, happy, mental health, physical health, live long life is one thing. And it's not wealth, it's not the amount people exercise, it is their interpersonal relationships. Those that have high quality relationships with others have better outcomes, live longer, are healthier, are happier, are more likely to succeed than those that have only poor quality or no connections, and they are feeling lonely. So there's a study that I saw which is quite shocking. It says that loneliness is an epidemic at the moment, and it's a very dangerous epidemic. A person who's experiencing acute loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of the impact that it has on their health. 15 cigarettes a day. You smoke a pack of cigarettes a day or you feel lonely, it has the same impact on your health. So how can we solve this problem? How can we deal with and heal from loneliness. So I like to divide this into four layers. There's 4 levels. The first level is what psychologists call weak ties. A weak tie means you go to the grocery store and you smile at the cashier and you say hello and how are you. You're sitting next to somebody on the train and you make eye contact. You smile at that person. You greet that person. These are small interactions with strangers that you probably will never see again in your life. But it's been scientifically proven that they boost our mood. They help us with our mental health, and they help us with our physical health as well. So the very first thing that you could do is try and be intentional. When you get out there and you see strangers, you see the barista at the coffee shop, smile at that person, greet that person. That human interaction, even though it's fleeting, even though it's very relatively minor, has a very positive impact. Then you can move up one, and that is to reach out to somebody who was a close friend, somebody who had a meaningful relationship in your life, but for some reason you've drifted apart. You haven't communicated to that person for a long time. The University of Chicago did a study, which is very interesting. They said they looked at people who had not reached out to another person, so and they encouraged them to reach out, sending a text saying, thinking about you, been a long time since we spoke, are you up for a chat? Just something as simple as that. And the person who was reaching out, doing the reaching out, assumed that the recipient would be awkward. The recipient would go, now you're reaching out to me? Like you maintain radio silence for a decade and suddenly you remember me from high school, from our high school days? What's going on? So that's what the person who was doing the reaching out thought. But then they interviewed the person who was the recipient of that outreach. And the person who was the recipient of the outreach, in all cases, was more positively disposed towards that outreach effort than the person who did the outreach ever anticipated it being. So in other words, don't feel bad about just suddenly reaching out to somebody out of the blue. It might feel awkward to you doing the reaching out, but to the other person, it feels very, very comfortable and a very loving gesture. So this is a very powerful thing, because when you start that conversation and you interact with that person, especially if you could do it in person, this is a very, very powerful antidote to loneliness. And then moving up, there's something that scientists call the mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect is an effect that says that if you see something constantly and repetitively, you like that thing more. So, for example, the original experiments that proved this effect were they would show people shapes, odd shapes, or words that were made up. And they showed these people these words. Now, if they showed them a word or a shape or an image just once, then people would say that they don't have an affinity, they don't think that the image is beautiful or enjoyable. However, if they were able to show the person the same image, the same words multiple times over a long period of time, then people would say that they actually like those words. So the more we're exposed to something, the mere exposure to something makes us like that thing. That's why the best friendships that we have are those friendships that started in school. Why? Because in school, every day, you sat in the same classroom with the same kids, and that created a kind of, it creates this effect where you feel that you like this person. So try and think of ways that you can go to the same events and see the same people on a regular basis. Some examples of this would be going to an exercise class. You go to the exercise class, and every single week or twice a week, you see the same people. Then all it takes is one person to say, "How are you?" And all of a sudden say, "Thank you for asking. I'm doing great." And that could lead to going to a coffee, and that could blossom into a close friendship and create that human connection. And it's more likely to happen. That's why most friendships start, as I said before, in schools, in work, where you're returning to the same office with the same people every time, exercise classes, religious prayer services. When you go to a prayer service and you're seeing the same people each time, they become the basis of your network, of your human network. And we need this so badly. So it's look for those opportunities where you could be with people on a consistent basis and put the mere exposure effect to good use. And then finally, of course, the highest level and the deepest level and the most beneficial level is those people we're really close to. Those people like our family members, our really best friends, that we can connect on in a deep way, that at 2 a.m. in the morning, when something's going wrong, you can call these people and they're going to be there for you. Those people and those relationships, even if they're few, they're high quality relationships and they can help you beat loneliness. So one way that we can really flourish is to put people in our lives and have meaningful relationships with those people. So I want to bless you all, as I do at the end of every podcast, that you should be able to find your flourish. And one of the best ways is to find relationships that flourish. They will give you so much, and they will bring so much joy and richness into your life. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'm looking very forward to spending more time with you in the future.